Hey, friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to the channel. So it's time again for another Ask Me Anything. That's right. It's time for Ask WrestleJuice. You guys left a ton of great questions last time I posted one of these QA threads on the community tab. So I'm back to read more of those and give you some good answers. Hopefully you'll appreciate them. If not, let me know in the comments below. While you're there, do me a huge favor. Hit that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. Later on this week, I'll be posting up another community tab question thread for you guys for next week. So be sure to have your notifications on. Click that little bell so that you always get notified when there's new WrestleJuice stuff. Let's hop into this. First up from Nikyle asks, who from the current crop of 2.0 wrestlers, other than Braun Breaker, do you see becoming a future WWE champion? Two names came to mind. Carmelo Hayes, who I think is doing some pretty decent character work right now, and it's really still early, but I think he looks really good. And then Odyssey Jones. I think Odyssey Jones right now is the guy that stands out to me as somebody who comes off as very genuine and very much comfortable with being on camera. I see other guys like, I don't know, Von Wagner, who really doesn't seem to be all that comfortable on camera yet. Andre Chase, who seems to be in sort of a, I kind of feel like he's going to be a comedy heel for like the rest of his career. Other 2.0 guys. Who are some other 2.0 guys? I mean, Braun Breaker's going to be an interesting one because I don't know if like the genetic child of Rick and Scott Steiner, if like Steiner brother, which is obviously his gimmick, which is who he is. I don't know if that's going to be the kind of thing that's wildly over in the WWE. I don't know if he's got much dimension beyond being Scott Steiner, and Scott Steiner is great as a meme, you know, like, I don't know that Scott Steiner, he was world champion in WCW, but if he was in his physical peak, I don't know that that ever really would have worked on a big, hey, he's the guy in WWE scale. I just don't know that I see that in Braun Breaker yet. It's only been a couple weeks. I could be wrong, but a guy that just yells at the camera and says, hey, you want a friend? Get a dog. I'm going to take your shit. I don't know that that's going to be guy like face of the WWE, but Odyssey Jones, I could see that. I could totally see that with Odyssey Jones. Plus he's huge. And so far he's pretty fun in the ring, and he's been able to put together different types of matches, which is one thing I'm really focusing on when I watch that dumpster fire. That is 2.0. If you guys want to see me do a video just tearing 2.0 down to the ground, let me know in the comments below. I love Odyssey Jones though. I think he's great. Deep voice dude, if you were a businessman in a high ranking position in WWE, would you even try to cater your product for the internet wrestling community? Or would you concede that demographic to AEW? Would it be possible for the IWC to love both equally? Yes! Yes, and it's so easy to do. People kind of overthink this shit. All the internet wrestling community really wants, all they really want is compelling stories and interesting characters. That's it. That's all. I honestly don't think the internet wrestling community needs to see attempts at 5-star matches every single time. Although it wouldn't hurt to tell your wrestlers, hey, go out there and give us a killer 18 minutes multiple times on your TV programs. They did that with NXT. It was awesome. Before 2.0. I just think if you pay attention to your audience and understand where they're coming from and don't cater to them, don't just say, oh, what do they seem to like right now? Okay, push that to the moon. That's not what I think the internet wrestling community wants. Nobody will complain. Well, that's not true. Most people won't complain if you simply give them interesting stories, interesting characters, and really good wrestling. It's a simple combination. It really is. And listen to your audience. You know, I always go back to CM Punk's title reign way back in the day and how it was ended. It was ended because it was so obvious that WWE wanted to up the stakes for Rock versus Cena 2. And so they pissed away all the goodwill they had for the CM Punk crowd and had him just job out to The Rock instead of adding CM Punk to the Cena versus Rock match. Now, I understand that they wanted that to be 1-1. Cena loses the first one and then he wins the second one. But adding CM Punk to that match at WrestleMania would have filled so many different roles. You would have really satiated the internet wrestling community that loved CM Punk. So they would have been happy because his dude is the main event. You're now showing him in the same light as The Rock and John Cena. You're making him happy because you're telling him that, hey, you matter to us, which always seemed to be CM Punk's main beef with the WWE is he just wanted to be considered what he felt he was, a big main event player. And I felt like he was that guy. And I think a lot of other people felt he was that guy too. So I honestly think if I am a businessman in a high ranking position in the WWE, I would do a better job of just listening to the fans and paying close attention to detail when it comes to story and character, and don't take for granted. Another example I could use is when Lana was getting put through the table by Nia Jax every week, like 9 times in a row. And at Survivor Series, they had the opportunity to pay that off, to have the people who are actually invested in her being tormented every single week, having them be able to get that satisfying conclusion to that story. And instead, they froze her out of the match and then gave her that, I think it was like a fluke. Didn't they have her win that match? But it was like a fluke. She never really got the closure because they thought it would be funny just to have her be frozen out of the match. I mean, she talked about this pretty recently. And I'm just thinking to myself, man, instead of just making yourself laugh as the creative head of WWE, why don't you actually try to craft stories that make sense and have logical conclusions that will satisfy your audience? Seems like a really easy thing to do, right? Or at least putting in the effort to do that. Insufficient Whispers asks, if AEW is never created, do you think guys like Darby Allin, MJF, Jungle Boy, or Pillman would ever get their big break in the WWE? Pillman, yes, 100%. Jungle Boy, probably. Darby and MJF? Darby, no. MJF, probably as a manager. I don't know. If AEW never started, NXT probably never would have rebranded it 2.0. So yeah, MJF would have been fine. He would have been fine. It might have taken a couple more years, but he would have been fine. Yeah. Let's see here. Jason Allenby says, are there any indie promotions that you regularly follow or go to for shows? He says he personally believes nothing beats an indie wrestling show. I agree with you completely. I love going to indie shows. Unfortunately, in this area in Sacramento, California, which is where I'm out of, they don't do a lot of indie shows. I'd have to go out to the Bay Area, which is like an hour and a half away, which isn't that bad, but traffic out there is a real pain in the ass. And there's no shows out there that are like, whoa, must see, I have to go out there. For that, I'd have to go down to LA, which is like a 6-hour drive. And especially during COVID, like, I'll probably do that a bit more in 2022. Yeah, I follow like GCW, which I think a lot of people do these days because it's sort of taken the place of like ECW. And they have their normal cast of characters. They do some really interesting stuff over there. So I do to a degree follow what's going on in GCW. Beyond that, I kind of keep an eye on PWG down there in LA because it's a show that I've always wanted to go. I've been to 2 PWG shows before they changed venues. I wish that they started running I wish that people would start running shows out here. I wish that we'd get, Supreme Pro Wrestling back. I don't know what the deal is with that. You'd probably COVID and finances, same as everybody else. Let's see here. Thabiso Pisane. Pisane? I don't know if I said that right. Says, what's your favorite wrestling year? Probably 2017. Because It's when I first was introduced to New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's that. And that was a year that we had a lot of fun doing a lot of stuff. That's when the beginnings of AEW really started to come together. NXT was really good back then. 2017, maybe 2018. Was 2018 when they did All In? Because that was like an awesome year. That was a pretty great year. So yeah, just a couple of years ago, to be honest with you. I mean, off and on, there's been some real, also like 2001. 2001 was it was just a really interesting year, because I'll never forget the first when we came home and we turned on the internet and friggin' Vince McMahon had bought WCW. That was nuts. That was absolutely nuts to see, and to watch how that all came together was really, really fascinating. So yeah, I would say 2001 was also just a really interesting year for pro wrestling. I'm more of a fan of oh wow, this is really cool, interesting stuff happening this year, as opposed to, oh, there were so many great matches, because especially these days, there are great matches every single year. I mean, there's just great match after great match after great match. So it's just sort of what's most interesting in wrestling. And 2017 is also personally, from a career standpoint, when Going In Raw really started taking off. So yeah, 2017. Let's see here. Noah Hoopengardner, what a great name, says, what do you think is the smartest thing WWE's done since the pandemic started? I would say it was, there's actually, Deep Voice Dude here has the right answer, and it's putting Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman together. That was absolutely the smartest thing they did. Putting the title on Bobby Lashley was also a really smart thing to do. I thought that was a really cool moment. I mean, Thunderdome was a really smart move, because I think that it did fill that, the Performance Center empty arena stuff was god awful. It was atrocious. It was so hard to watch that stuff and then to review it over at Going In Raw. And then when Thunderdome happened, it was okay, the presentation's a bit better here. But nothing beats having live fans there, really. Let's see here. Jesse Starr. This is a great question. If Friendoville had to be taken in a direction that didn't include wrestling, what would blank juice be? I think the only other direction I really would have taken the channel would have been movie stuff. You saw a little bit of that. If I were to choose one specific thing, it would have been like nerd movie stuff. But there's already so much of that out there. And what I realized was there's so much in the sort of general genre of nerd culture that it's difficult to sort of do it all. And so I probably would have had to have done stuck to just Marvel and DC, or just Marvel. I don't know. That just doesn't really even seem interesting to me all that much. And plus, I'm not as much of a movie aficionado as I really would have liked to have been. I went to film school, but there are so many movies out there that I have not seen and haven't even heard of that are probably awesome and amazing. So it's I can't really speak on with any authority on movies. So yeah, just it's at this point, it's wrestling. I'm in my early 40s. This is what I built my career on. This is what I'm stuck with. Or comic books. Comic books would have been so much fun. But when I thought about it, I really don't know a whole lot about comic books. I know what I like, and I know a couple things here and there, but then I go and I watch a channel like Cartoonist Kayfabe. I'm like, God damn, why would anybody watch me when they have that? Anyways. Yeah, probably would have movies. Let's see here. So, I don't even know how to say this name. I think it's Rotten. Keeps on asking me if I will rank every one of QT Marshall's matches in AEW. No, I'm not going to do that. It sounds like a colossal waste of time. It really does. How about this? I will rank every one of QT Marshall's matches in AEW if I hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. You can keep me to that, okay? Let's see here. Manuel Ramirez says, "Hey Steve, what do you think of Heels on Stars?" I think it's great. I think all of you should be watching it. It's good, cheesy fun with some actual really high quality drama going on there. I love Heels. I think it's really fantastic. Let's see here. The Bard, how bad would 2.0 have to get, and for how long would it have to persist before NXT goes the way of 205 Live? I suspect there's a big difference here because NXT has a TV deal worth like $40 million a year. I suspect USA will be pissed off if the ratings continue to plummet over the next couple of months and they're unable to boost them through ratings gimmicks. If you have just a bunch of 3-minute matches with a bunch of wrestlers who have only been wrestling since February and they can only string together one 3-minute match and they just copy and paste that every week, it's not going to make for compelling television. The ratings will just continue to plummet because you can only watch a train wreck for so long before it gets boring. So I think the ratings will have to dip in total viewership to 400,000. I mean, it'd be shocking if it went down to 300,000. You'd be looking at a pretty drastic change there. And I don't know what happens at that point. I really don't. I honestly don't. There has to be some sort of contractual obligation to meet certain numbers, you would think, but I have no idea. Baba. What wrestling move would you not take no matter how much money someone would pay you? The Alabama Slam. Deep voice dude, we'll end on this one. Do you think WWE losing Adam Cole was the catalyst to NXT being changed from super indie to developmental? What's the point of being a super indie if indie darlings prefer AEW? That's exactly right. Did WWE basically concede indie darlings to AEW? 100%. Absolutely, yes. They understood that AEW competing with AEW for indie talent was too expensive and kind of futile, as opposed to just doing what they did before and just building up their own dudes. So yeah, they totally 100,000% completely ceded that to AEW. And they sort of did another thing in the process. They told indie wrestlers, hey, if you really want to be part of WWE, don't be an indie wrestler. Come see us first. And so a lot of the indie wrestlers out there are like, oh shit, now AEW is going to be stuck because all these really great names that are coming up in the indie ranks, they are not going to be able to sign them all. Contrary to what some people believe, they're not going to be able to sign them all. So yeah, that totally happened. Was Adam Cole the reason for that? No. Adam Cole was separate from that. He was headed to main roster anyways, but the failure of NXT to hold its own against AEW and really to crush AEW, which was never realistic in the first place, did NXT in. WWE realized that approach was not going to work anymore. And so they decided to completely rebrand NXT. And now it's a massive pile of shit. If you want to see a video where I take a dump all over NXT 2.0, let me know in the comments below. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. Watch one of these other videos below or next to me, wherever they are. Give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Yeah, we'll do that.